Hello everyone, welcome to the stream. Thanks for joining me today on this Sunday. I see we have some people in the chat. Hi Hector, hi Teek, hi Sekmatara, thanks for returning guys. For those of you who don't know, my name is Trent and I'm the host of this channel. If you've been here before, thanks for coming back. And if you haven't been here before, just to kind of give you a little overview of how things usually go. I usually have a main topic here that I talk about. Today it's the layer effects. And that usually takes about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, sometimes longer depending on the subject. And then I go into a Q&A session, kind of answering your questions that you posted on my videos throughout the week, and also taking your questions. Certainly if you have any questions throughout the stream, you can ask them. I can answer your layer effects ones as I talk about it. If they're about something else, I'll try to wait till the end of the stream to go over them just to not get off topic too much. Hi Breezer, hi 0815. Thanks for joining. Good to see you guys again. So yeah, today's topic is layer effects. And Joe, great to see you here. Hi IH from Germany. So today's topic is layer effects. And let me just kind of scroll over to the table of contents here. For those who don't know, the layer effects, that's this button here. And if I go to some random document in Affinity Designer, if I hit tab, so if I'm on the layers tab here, we're talking about this button over here, this guy. So that's what we'll be looking at today. So I thought we'd go over that. It has some cool abilities and features that I think are pretty useful. Hi, Bill. And I kind of would start off with how they actually work, like what are some things you can do with them, how you can turn them on, how you can turn them off. And then we'll actually go one by one over the options there. So if that sounds cool, I'll get started on them. Hi, Anne from Scotland. So let's just kind of talk first of all about how do you actually use these things on a basic level and what can they do? I'm an Affinity Designer. I'll mostly be using that today, but this applies to Publisher and Photo also. On both programs, when you see the Layers tab, you'll see the option for FX down there. So let me just create a basic shape to start with. I'll create a star. I like to make them yellow just for fun. And the basic way they work, there's two ways you can add them. One is with your layer selected here, you can click the FX button. And to start, I'm just going to do something simple like outline. I'll talk about it more later, but just know that there's an effect called outline. I can click on it. I can make it thicker. And I'll click close. So I've added an effects to my star here, and that's through this method here. I clicked on the FX button. Now there's another way you can actually add the effects too if you want. You can click on this FX tab here, and you can actually click on one of these to modify it. So the outline here, if you can't see it, I clicked on the Quick Effects button, and then I can expand the outline. I can modify it some more. So if I expand outline here, I can go and I can change it again. Personally, I usually just use the other method here of clicking on the button here. Now if you don't see this Quick Effects, it's probably here, window, yeah, Quick Effects. So make sure that's checked if you want to use that way. Hi Jim from Canada. Glad you're here to protect us. So that's kind of the basic level of how you would add an effect. And if you want to turn it off, you can click on the effects again, and you can uncheck it here. So that's how you would turn it off. Now, something we can also do, I'll just turn it back on. We can add multiple effects to this object here too. So let me get this on the screen. Let me move this over a bit. Let me close. So we have the ability to add multiple effects. So I'll turn back on my outline here. And one thing I always forget to do, I don't know if you noticed that, when you click on something, be sure to select it also so you actually get the other options here. I always will click on something, I'll enable it, and I'll be adjusting the controls, and I'll be like, why is my shadow not working? And it's because I forgot to actually click on it too. So I added an outline to my star. I'll also add a shadow. Now when I click on it, usually by default nothing really happens. Let me just add a shadow here. And why is the shadow not showing? I have to make it bigger here. I notice my computer is a little bit messed up today, so some things are lagging. I'm not sure if this is the result of that or not. But there should be a shadow. I don't know why it's not going. Let's try another shape. I was typing earlier today and things weren't working. Yeah, that one works. Just go back to the star. FX. Something's wrong with my star here. Let's create another star. FX. Outer shadow. There we go. That one works. Okay. So I can add an outer shadow to it. And let me add an outline. And I'll go into these in more detail later. I'm just trying to show you like the fact that we can add multiple things with the multiple checkboxes. Now, one of the interesting things too is you notice some of them have these pluses and cross marks. So what you can do is you can add the same effect multiple times. So if I click outline, I click plus, I can add another outline. So let me change the shape here, or the color rather. I'll make it pink. Now I'll make it really thick. And you can see there's kind of a, there's two outlines now. There's the black one, which I added up here, and then there's the pink one down below. And the order actually matters. So my pink one is on the bottom, and I made it really thick. So it's showing from behind that black one on top. If I move the black one down, so down here, you can click these arrows to move your effects up and down. So I'll move this black one down. You can see it disappears because it's thinner and it's underneath the magenta one here. So you want to make sure you have these in the right order, and you want to make sure that the one on the bottom is actually thicker. I can talk a little bit more about that later. But what you can do is then you can go and you can delete one. So it's like, okay, I don't like this one here. I'll click the X and I remove it. And if you click the X with the last one, yeah, it'll clear it. But that's it there. So that's kind of a basic way you can toggle effects. You can add them on. So Phil, you're saying the outline was over it. Let me see if that was the case. Let me try one more. So if I add an outline, like it was that thick. Let me add an outer shadow. I guess I was, yeah, maybe, I don't know. I don't think it was doing that before. Like, I don't think I was seeing that much. Oh well, just one of those things. But let's see, so that's another thing that's really interesting about the effects is that the way you can copy them to each other or save them as a style. So this is something I only discovered actually recently. So let's say I had a circle here. If you wanted to quickly copy this stars effects to the ellipse here, what you can do over here is you can click this FX icon and just like drag it up here. So I'm gonna click and drag, so I'll do that right now. So I'll click the effects, I'll drag, and then I'll let go. And now it's applied to my ellipse as well. So that's a really nice little shortcut that I only discovered like, I don't know, about a month or so ago. So that's a pretty interesting little thing there, the way you can kind of copy the effects around. One thing is that I don't know of an exact way to like reset an effect. So I think, and I looked on the Affinity forums and I couldn't find like a straightforward way to just reset something. So like by reset, I mean, if I have this, let me try to show it, make it so you can see everything. Let's say I have this shadow, I do a ton of crazy things to it. I make it red, I make it really big, you know, I do something, and eventually I want it back to normal. If I turn it off and turn it back on, it's just the same as what I did. What if I click the X? I guess I just discovered that. Okay, so if you click the X, that will actually reset the effect. Okay, so that, but I don't think that works with the ones without the X. So if I go without the X, let's do this outer glow. So outer glow, there's no X, so I don't know of a good way to reset it. So you're kind of a little bit out of luck on that case there. So it's kind of a minor thing, but it's a little frustrating, I think. And you can also add the effects to the styles. So if I have a style here, we have a styles tab. So that's this tab here, styles. And if you don't see that, you can go to window styles. So let me just add a bunch of crazy effects to this one. So if I go to effects, I'll turn on an outline, give it an outline. Let's give it some bevel effect. So it doesn't look great, but let's just save it as something. With this object selected, I can go to my styles tab here. And I can go to this, I can click these three lines. And I can say add style from selection. And we get it down there. So if I go and I draw something else, let's draw a star. Let me reset the style of that. So to reset a style altogether, what I do is I click this button up here, revert to defaults. So that one up there, you can get a shape back to normal. So if I have this selected, I can click my style down here, and now it looks like the style I saved. So that's a nice way you can save the styles. So if you didn't see that, what I did is I selected my object with the FX applied, and then I clicked the 3 lines over here with my styles selected, and then you can say add style from selection. So that's a way you can save those guys there. So let's look at actually some of the effects in action here. So let's actually look at what they can do. We'll start with outline. I think that has some useful use cases here. So let me open that. And I'll start again with a vector. So outline is kind of similar to stroke, but there's one really cool thing outline can do that stroke can't. So let me add an outline or a star here. I'll turn off the stroke. So this is a stroke. I'll turn this off. What I'll do instead is I'll add an outline. So I'll go to the effects here, and I can click outline, and I want to select it. Now I kind of showed you this a little bit already, but I'll kind of explain how it works now. Obviously the most important thing is probably radius and color. These are the ones you want to do the most. So with radius, I can set the radius of it. And for a lot of these controls, they have a max value, but you can actually type in more. So the max value is 100 pixels here. In terms of the slider, it only goes up to 100. But I should be able to type in a value. So I can type in 300, enter, and it'll actually go bigger. But once you start using the slider, you're limited to that 0 to 100 pixel range. And like I said, with something like this, you can add another outline. So I can add an outline here. And I'll make it smaller so it shows up. Yeah. And now you can actually do this with a normal stroke. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but let me add a star here. You don't need effects to add multiple strokes like this. What you can actually do is go to stroke. Actually, you can go to appearance here. So there's this appearance window. And this is the appearance of your current object you have selected. And right now I don't have a stroke, but I can add a stroke. So let's click on this. I'll drag this up. And I've added a stroke there. But I can also click add stroke down here. And I can add an additional stroke to this shape. So I can click add stroke. And we have another one here. So let me click this. I'll make this thick. Change the color. So I made it dotted. So you can see, again, not the most aesthetically pleasing design maybe, but you are able to add multiple strokes to a shape. If you have it selected and then you go to the appearance tab, it lets you add more strokes here if you like. So the fact that the effects can do this isn't totally unique. And in fact, if you're probably just doing with vectors, it may be more useful to just use these strokes instead of the outline effect here. So I'll delete that. Of course, you can change the alignment and things like that too. So we have these options, alignment. So it can be centered. So it's just kind of how is it centered on the line here. So you can see that's centered inside, outside. But you don't have a lot of the same options you have with the vector stroke. So again, let me just show the vector stroke here. Let me reset the style. With the stroke here, well, I'll go through this. I'll just go through the stroke menu. You have all these options here for strokes where you can make it dotted. You know, I can change the spacing, all that kind of stuff. So for the most part for vectors, I don't know if the outline does much for you. But the really powerful thing of the outline is how it acts with bitmaps. So let me show you an example of that here. Let me just load a bitmap raster image. And this was an image I used in one of my recent thumbnails. I should just place. So what I can do is, let's say this is a square image, obviously, or rectangle, I should say, not a square. But what I can do, let me make a copy of it. And let me go into the pixel persona and let me just isolate, let me mask out this person here. So let's take this selection brush. So I'm going to select this brush over here. I'm going to select the selection brush. And I'll just mask her out. I'm not going to do the world's best masking job. I'm just going to do something basic that gets the job done. So again, this is a JPEG, but this would work with a BMP or something too, or not a BMP, but a PNG. Not a lot of people using BMPs these days. Showing my age, I guess. And again, I'm just going to mask her out here. Not the best job ever, but we'll just get the basics done. And now that I've selected her there, what I can do is I'll click the mask layer button here. I'm not going to go into a big, huge thing on masking. I have some videos on that, but this is what you would do. To mask out a bitmap image in Affinity Designer, click mask layer. And now we have that woman masked out there. Now, actually, let me give you two examples here. So if I take the stroke here, let me change the stroke on this image. And it actually is not really doing anything. Actually, what it's doing is it's taking the stroke of the outer part of the image here. So for some reason it's not showing. It should be showing. But what I can do actually, for a transparent image, what I can do is I can actually, let's see if the stroke is doing anything on that one. Yeah, so you're not going to get much happening with that stroke there. But the power of the effects tool here is with my layer selected here, I can click effects and outline. I can give an outline to this transparent image here. And this is something that you can't do with the stroke tool. So this is actually very nice because you can actually, give her a white outline or something like that. And the outline will respect the transparency of your raster image. So I'll delete these just to make things not confusing anymore. So this is like what I like outline for, is putting outlines on bitmap raster images, and the outline is responsive to the mask as you alter it. So if I go to my pixel persona here, actually I was in the pixel persona, that's why the thing wasn't working, I think. If I actually adjust my mask, so to adjust the mask, I can select my paintbrush, and if I paint in black, let me select a better brush. I have some crazy brush selected. I'm just going to select a basic brush that just has a solid part to it. And make it not transparent. There's some wet thing. Yeah, no wet edges. And why is it still not solid? Should be solid. Brush. And let's see. I'm not sure why it's not totally solid. But anyway, you can like erase your bitmap image here with the mask. And you used to respect it. I'm not sure why it's not doing that now. But anyway, the outline will follow, the transparency of your image there. Okay. Let me just see what else is happening here. Having a strange day on my computer. Some of like the keyboard commands weren't working. Like the tab wasn't like toggling my interface. So I don't know if I have to update Affinity or what. But yeah, that's the main benefit of the outline there, is that you can actually get outlines for raster images. Let me go back here. So you can turn off the mask. So when I turn off the mask, you can see it's outlining the edge of the image here. But if I turn on the mask, it's outlining that part. Hi, Big Book Cafe. Yeah, I think it's a pretty cool feature, and I used it in a thumbnail for a video. Let me show you that thumbnail just because I think it's kind of interesting. It was for the, I believe it was for the, that persona where the name is escaping me at the moment. I'm going to remember it the second I see it. The persona for distorting things. Liquify, yeah, Liquify. Let me show you that thumbnail. Yeah, SecMat, I checked to see if the brush was on wet. It didn't seem to be on wet. So I went to Pixel Persona. I selected the brush in Pixel Persona. Brush. Have the brush selected. No wet, so I'm not sure why that's happening. But anyway, this was where I used that actually in action. So this was the image, and without the, let me toggle the effects here. So that was without the outline, with the outline. So I thought it was pretty useful there. Hi, Will. Thanks for joining. So that's the basic thing of the outline that I would recommend, using it for raster images. And so you can see here I used it in this one for this thumbnail of one of the videos. So let's check out the next one. Sure, save. And emboss. So that's this is kind of a interesting one. This one reminds me of like the 90s in a lot of ways. Like if you used the web in 1997 or something, that's what this one reminds me of. So let's talk about bevel and emboss here. So once again, I'll start with a vector shape here. And I'll click effects. So that's actually the first one listed here, this bevel and emboss. So I'll click this. And we have these different types here. So let me just adjust some of the settings so you can actually see something happening. So this is why I said it kind of reminds me of the 90s. Like these are just like in Netscape, you'd see buttons that looked like this, and it was kind of the big fancy thing to have these pseudo 3D graphics and all that. But you can see there's the two modes, kind of pillow and emboss, and they kind of have a slightly different effect. As far as I can tell, but the difference between pillow and emboss is basically the way the shadow acts. So the shadow for pillow, you can see it's kind of coming in this direction over here. For emboss, it's the other way there. And then if you want to do, you can do outer. So that just gives you the shadow effect of emboss, I guess. Yeah, outer just gives you the shadow effect. And then inner removes the shadow effect of emboss. So that is what these kind of three things do. But you know, if you don't remember them, you can just kind of toggle them and just remember that that's what they're doing. They're kind of altering how the shadow appears or whether it appears. So the radius and the depth are kind of by default, they're linked. Again, let me zoom in so you can see. It'll be clear what happens when I change the radius. So if I change the radius, you can see it's kind of like where that edge is appearing. And actually, let me turn up the soften, because this soften is going to determine, let's see, make it higher there. Yeah, once again, soften's not doing anything. Let's show the depth. So soften, what it should be doing is it should be like sharpening the edge. Let me close Affinity Designer and open it again. Close and open. It's definitely behaving strange today. I don't know what's happening. Okay, so it's having a little bit of effect. I thought it would have more. Maybe I have to go more than 20. Let's go 100. Bob, Big Book Cafe, you're saying this happens on your computer also. Yeah, on my computer upstairs, I remember I was able to get this like really sharp. And I don't know why this is not doing that here. Maybe it's the pillow. Yeah, I think the pillow one I can get sharper edges here. But yeah, okay, so with pillow, yeah, okay, so minimizing soften. Let me just go back to emboss for a second. I'll stick with the pillow one. So when I make it like really unsoft, I guess, the soft value low, you can see I get a very soft edge. And when I make it bigger, you can see the edge is getting kind of smooth and you know, kind of hard to see. And when I say edge, I'm talking about like this part here, like things like that and like that. So you can control those edges there. Now let's see if this one actually shows up. The profile is kind of talking about how the highlight appears. So this one's a little kind of hard to see, but let me see if I can actually make it big. So you have these different profile options, and it's kind of like the characteristic of the light here. So you can change how it's going to appear, what the fall off is. I guess that's one interesting thing. Yeah, I guess that kind of affects the sharpness of the edge too. So I think, yeah, so if I have the standard profile, okay, that makes it a little easier to see. So I changed the standard profile, which is like how the light appears on the edges. And now you can kind of see more of like the sharpness. But if I remove the profile, yeah, that seems to have messed it up. So I'll keep it like there. this standard profile kind of helps show the effect a little bit better, I think. So this is the soften effect here. I can make it super sharp on the edge. Yeah, Affinity weirdness. Yeah, Will Lee, yeah, I guess they do need like a bug update. Usually I report things on the Affinity forums. They're pretty good about stuff there, so I'll post there and like give feedback or something when stuff happens. So that's kind of these top two settings here. The direction, of course, is where the light is coming from. Now, you kind of have two options here. One is like the angle of where it's coming from, and the other is the height. So the elevation is controlled by how far the dot is from the center. So if I make it 90, that's kind of like when the dot is like directly, the light source you can think of as being directly overhead. So it's like 90 degrees up into the air. So you're kind of getting the shadow is kind of showing in all directions equally. Whereas if I move it to the side, you can kind of see you can see the light source kind of moving around a little bit. And then the angle here is where it is relative, in the circular direction. So that's kind of what the azimuth and elevation are doing over here. And there's a couple controls that have this same kind of effect here. So the main thing to know about this is like how far the dot is from the center matters just as much as like what the angle is that you're doing it at. So I'd say play with that a little bit if you're trying to get an effect going here. And then let's see the last setting. Yeah, the highlight and the shadow, you can change the color of those. So highlights, typically, we talked about blend modes a little bit in the past. So when you want to make something kind of brighter and stand out, it's a screen mode, the screen blend mode, which makes things lighter, and you can change the color if you like, if you so desire. I don't know, it depends on what your lighting source is, but you can change it. Sometimes it's hard to see much of an effect. Let's put it back to white. And then the multiply effect is going to be your shadows. Okay, so you can change the color there. If I want to make the shadows pink, so you can see now they're a little bit pinker, that kind of thing. So that's Bevel and Emboss. I don't really use it that much, but I guess there are some use cases for it. You can also see it used more with, so this is a different kind of vector, so you can see it works with multiple colors and multiple kind of shapes together. So I have this whole group here. I can click FX. I can add a Bevel and Emboss to the whole thing if I want. Almost looks like kind of like a stained glass effect if you do this in some ways, I think. So it kind of gives like a little height to the edge there if you want. So this is before, after, before, after. And of course it works with text too. So if you want to bevel your text to give it a little more of an edge there, like so. I guess, like I said, it kind of reminds me of the 90s, but maybe there's still use case. Maybe if you want to do some retro web page. And it does work with images also. So this is an image. It's transparent in the white area. So I can add the effects here. And I'll, it kind of gives it like a little bit of a rounded edge. So if I say before, after, before, after. I guess I could see some use cases for this if you want to give a little bit of depth to something, make it seem like it's standing out. Maybe like in a mock-up or something, like if you had a sticker and you want to make it look like it's actually kind of, like a sticker on a laptop or something. Maybe you could do this kind of effect. It's kind of subtle, but I think it's kind of cool. So those are the main use cases I would see for that, but maybe there are some others. Certainly let me know if you know of any. So this is the 3D one again. And this is, again, one I don't use too much. I'll just start with a, wow, that's crazy style. I'll just show you a basic shape, and then we can move on to some of the more common ones that I think are more useful. So it's kind of like, clicking the wrong button. It's kind of like Bevel and Emboss, but the main difference is that you don't have like the shadows effects, as far as I can tell. But one of the more interesting things is you can actually kind of like make a sphere with this one. So this one, there's lots of the settings up here are pretty similar to what I showed you before, but what I can do down here with these settings, and let me select that, is you can kind of almost add a shaded sphere effect. So let me increase the radius. This is going to be one where I'm going to want to actually manually change the radius here. So let me add it to like 300. It's going to kind of depend. Let's say 500. Let me soften it. Actually, soften it more. Like 700. Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, if I remove it, okay, removing the profile looks better. And what you can do is you can kind of like toggle these settings to get like a shaded sphere effect going if you want. So you kind of got to play with it, but I think actually right here, like if you want to create a shaded sphere, the 3D tool is a pretty good way to do that. I can change the source of the light here. So this is the light source direction. And the really cool thing about this one is you can actually add like a second light source. So I can, down here at the light sources, let me just zoom in and show you the whole thing. So down here you have one, but you can add another one. So I'll click add. So for my second light source, let's make it say, I don't know, some type of reddish. Maybe let's make it like a blue. Yeah, like that. Like that's kind of interesting. So I can like make the other light source come from the other end, and this first light source I can go back to, maybe it's coming from that side, like that. So I think for me, like this would be the main use case for this one is using a sphere or something. But if you want to like add depth to some other shape, certainly that's possible too. So moving on. So let's go to the, I forgot to open my thing. Let's go to the shadows and glows ones. And let me show you that. Just open up my main table of contents again. So we talked about outline, bevel and emboss, 3D. So let's go to shadows and glows. And I kind of grouped them all together because I think there's a lot of related concepts with these ones. So let's go to shadow. So I did make a video about this one, and this one is used a lot, I think. So shadows. So I created a vector here. Let's just look at how shadows can work with the vector to begin with. So once again, I'll click the effects. And there's a couple different shadows. There's outer shadow and inner shadow. So let's go to outer shadow first. And the interesting thing about this one is, well, you can manually create shadows or you can use this effects here. I'll show you how to manually create shadows later on when we talk about the Gaussian blur. But what we can do here is, well, we click a shadow, we get our shadow. And of course, we can kind of change the properties of that shadow. So the radius, like this, you know, radius is kind of like how diffuse it's going to be or how sharp the edge is going to be. So I can make a very sharp shadow or I can make a very soft shadow. And then we have the offset. So the offset is going to be kind of how shifted it is. Now what's really interesting about this is we have the offset tool. So that's this button here. So instead of like manually dragging the offset around, you can actually, let me make the shadow really sharp. You can actually click the offset tool and then you can drag the shadow around how you want. And a couple of these tools have this setting. So what I did is I clicked the offset tool and now I can actually move it around manually instead of just like fiddling with this offset parameter all the time. So I think it's a pretty powerful little feature here. I guess, you know, offset is a combination of angle and offset. You can see as I move it, the angle and the offset are moving. So if you know the exact parameters, you can enter them there, or you can just drag it to where you would like them to be. And intensity is also another thing. Kind of almost how sharp it's going to be, but not quite. You can see the edge starts to become really pixelated when you give it a very high intensity, or you can just dial it down. I usually keep it in the middle somewhere. And then the color, you're free to change the color if you like. So you can make it red or whatever color you like. What you can also do with these, this is another one of those options that has the plus option. So we can have one shadow going this way, and then maybe I want another shadow going some other way. And I can feel my computer slowing down a little bit. So how to make a shadow with fall off. I think the main thing is like I don't know if you can actually like linearly define the fall off, say, you know, like a profile curve or something like that. So I'm not sure that's exactly like a feature there. So I'm not quite sure like how that would be done. I think manually you could do it with like a mask or something like that if you wanted to soften the edges of the shape a little bit. But again, like if you want to have the color gradually change in there, I don't know if there's like a profile or something like that you can do. Let me turn off one of them. So like if you want like, I know what you're saying, you wanted to like linearly have it go there. One thing you can do, I guess while we're here, I'll just show you how to manually create a shadow. So if you did a star here, so the way you can like manually create a shadow is copy your object and then give it some type of color here. gray. Then you want to put it below, so I'll put it underneath my star here. And what you can do is you can set the blend mode to multiply. And then you can do the Gaussian blur option. So if I click effects, there's another effects, I can give it a blur. And I can do like that. And I guess, you know, a blur effect maybe has some type of fall off here. So this, I guess, has a little bit of a fall off there. You can see it kind of, depending on how big the blur is, you're going to be falling off there. So that is one way you could do it. Now, could you actually design a fall off curve? I'm not exactly sure, but I think, you know, using the blur option would be one way to do that. So yeah. Hopefully that answers your question somewhat 0815. Definitely let me know if you find another way. But this is kind of the way I usually create shadows, just manually copy your thing and add a blur to it. I'll talk about that again at the end there. When I talk about the blur effect. So we can also add shadows to shapes like this, you know, manually created shapes. So let me add an effects to it. Outer shadow. Now you're probably wondering, I'll use this as an example to explain like what does this fill knockout shadow do? So that's kind of a confusing thing, like what does that do? Well, what happens is this determines how the shadow behaves when our shape is transparent. And when I say transparent, it just means like this setting down here. It's not about any other transparency settings, it's just this one down here. So fill knockout when transparent, if I make the opacity of my selection, if I drag it down, you can see the object is invisible, but the shadow is still there, okay? And then if I select my object, if I uncheck this box, the object isn't blocking the shadow anymore. So basically, when I click this, it means the invisible shape is blocking part of the shadow. And when I uncheck it, the invisible shape isn't blocking the shadow anymore. But the key thing to really remember about this is that this kind of messed me up a lot early on. Is like it only is related to this opacity here. So if I select this, it's not about it's not about this opacity. So if I reduce this opacity, the whole thing disappears. Okay. So I'll bring it back. But if you just have a shape that you just want to have the shadow for, but you don't want to show the shape itself, go to effects, add the shadow, and then reduce the transparency here. And then depending on whether or not you want this to block the shadow or not, you would do this knockout shadow effect like that. So that's how that works. Hi Young Dot, glad to hear you saw the tutorials. Hope they were useful. Now shadow can also be used with transparent images, and let me just show you. These two images are transparent. Oh well, one is transparent, one's not. So let me add a background here. Okay. So for this image, it has transparency around the orange here. I'll add a shadow to it. So outer shadow. And you can see it respects the transparency. It follows the transparency. Whereas this one over here, well, it does follow the transparency, but the apple isn't actually transparent. So I'll add that. Now the problem that happens is a lot of people, they'll take an image like this apple and they'll have it on a white background and they'll be kind of confused like, why is this happening? And the reason it's happening is because your image wasn't transparent. So this orange here, it's actually transparent, the area around the orange, but this apple, the area around it isn't transparent. So that's, if you're getting this kind of effect, that's what's happening. So you want to make sure that thing's transparent. So you could go to the pixel persona, select the selection brush, mask it, and then do this. Control D. And then, let's see, the mask should just be for the apple. Yeah, and now, so now the shadow is respecting the mask. Okay, so if I make it, let me make it thicker so you can see. Right. So that's how you would get a mask. So that's how you get a shadow around that. If I turn off the mask, you can see the shadows around there. And this would be, let me try that outline thing again. Yeah, this is what I was trying to show before. So yeah, I don't know why it wasn't working on that other image. But basically, when you outline a raster image, you get this effect. But if you add a mask to it, the outline will affect, it'll respect the transparency. So that was that. Now, one thing I wanted to show you was how the shadow effect affects groups of things. Let me see. So I have these objects here, and I'll group them together. So I'll press Control G. So these are all a group now. And I can apply a shadow to the whole group. So I'll put the things over each other. And this kind of goes with a lot of the effects we show. So with these objects grouped, I'll click Effects. And sorry, things keep going off screen. I'm trying to keep them on screen. I'll click Outer Shadow. Let's make it very sharp so you can see. And what you'll notice is that when I apply Outer Shadow to a group, if I zoom in, it's taking the edges of the group. So you're not seeing the shadow when these things are overlapping here, but rather what's happening is it's looking at the group as a whole. It's kind of compositing it into one image, and then it's putting a shadow around that whole thing. Now, if I didn't want to do that, what I could do, I can give you a text example after, spoiler, is I could take these things out of the group. And then what you can do is you can actually select multiple objects at the same time. So I'll select multiple objects here. I'll click Effects. And then I will, let's see, I'll add the outer shadow. And now you can see like what's happening now is the shadows are appearing over the individual objects, okay? And the reason that's happening is because I've applied the effects to each individual object. So you can see the shadow here, it's falling over all the different objects. That's different than when I had the objects grouped and I was applying the shadow to the whole thing, okay? So here you're saying, when I have time, is there a way to make leather texture with effects? I don't really know of how you could do that. Looking at the effects, I'm not sure what they would do for you for a leather texture. Basically, like I said last time, you would have an image of leather, some type of texture you wanted, and then you would just clip it into your shape. You would just drag it onto the shape's name, and then it would be inside that shape. So I'm not sure if effects would help much with that. Certainly, if anyone has an idea of how it could help, I'm open to it. But I'm not. If I was going to create a leather, any kind of texture effect, I'm not sure what exactly how the effects could help you with that. Like if you're talking about these 3D and Bevel and Emboss, I don't think they have that option really. So like I can't think of a way to use them that would make it look like leather. Whoops. And shadow works with text also. But one thing I'll tell you is I'll show you the inner shadow effect here, just for a little variety. So if I click Effects, we have this inner shadow option here. And inner shadow is kind of cool. It has like a different effect. It has a different look to it. So if you add inner shadow, it kind of makes something look like it's almost cut out in a way. So it's almost like this is the word text is cut out of our background, and there's like a blue paper behind it, and we're casting a shadow. So it's quite similar to the shadow controls. You can change the angle to make it look different ways. And you can use the offset tool too if you like. But that's essentially what the inner shadow does. I'm sorry. So not much really to say about that. What I will say about it is that it's you can continue editing your text. So ABC. That is it's non-destructive, so you can always change your text, right? XYZ, and I can add outer shadow. So yeah, gradient overlay, that could be a thing. Speaking of which, we'll look at that in a second. But yeah, possibly there could be a way to do something with that. So now let's look at glow. And I made a video about these ones a couple weeks ago. And glow is interesting, but I'm going to show you kind of a little trick to getting a better glow effect, I think. So we have some text here, some text I made. And I made a dark background just because a white glow on a white background wouldn't really show up too well. So I'll click the effects. And outer glow is this one down here. Now you'll notice there's no option to add multiple ones. You can only add one. So I'll click plus. And it's very similar to a shadow in some ways. You can actually increase the radius. And you can notice my text is kind of glowing down here. And again, I think white glow is kind of a little on the lame side. Let's change the color. I'll change it like magenta there. So, you know, this is a glow effect with text. And I can say ABC. I can always change it. It's very non-destructive. You know, it's very editable. I can add a star. Let's do that. And now, I don't know what color I'll make my star. Let's make it white. And I can like add a glow effect to it. I'll click and drag the effects to give it this, to quickly add it. So there I can like make my star glow. If I make it empty, I kind of like this. So I just gave it a white stroke and the glow will follow the stroke there. So kind of giving a white center with a colored glow is kind of a standard way of creating these neon effects. That's one of the ways that's done there. Now, the thing about glow is, like I said, it doesn't have all the properties of the shadow effect. So when you look at the shadow effect, let me just show you one thing here. Outer shadow had all these options. And one of the things you can do is you can actually you can create a shadow that looks like a glow. So let's actually do that. First of all, let's select this glow here. And let me just copy and paste the options. So this is glow. Close this. And the key thing is the blend modes here. So let me remove this effect. Well, let me just say this is like the this is the glow effect. Huh. All right, so this is our, whoops. So this one here is our glow example. Let me show you how to do the same thing except with a shadow effect, okay? So let's do shadow. And if you kind of understand this, it's like a good it's a good demonstration of like knowing how blend modes work. So let's take this. And let me see the easiest way to show you guys this. Trying to keep everything on screen is the main challenge. Just trying to organize things a little bit. All right. I think you guys can see this. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the shadow effect to give a glowing effect on this text here. So I'm going to click outer shadow. And, well, let me add an outer shadow. So if I increase the radius, I increase the offset, I increase the intensity, you can see there's like a shadow here, but that's not really what we want. What we want is a glowing effect. So I'll change the color. Let's change it to red or something. Now, once again, that doesn't really do anything because we're in this multiply blend mode. So what our outer glow blend mode was doing was it was in the screen mode. So let me change the blend mode of the shadow to screen. And now you can see it's starting to actually look like a glow. And what I can do is I can increase the opacity. And I can increase the radius to give it more of a blur. And let's see, let me reduce the offset. So now we have a glow effect going on here. And this is not using the glow, this is using the outer shadow. And the power we have of this is glow, if I believe, yeah, glow didn't allow us to change the angle or the offset. Glow only allowed us to go from the center. So with when we use the shadow layer, when we use the shadow effect instead, we can actually offset it if we want. We can change the direction if we like. We can always change the radius. But another thing we can do is we can actually like, we can add a second one. So I'll click outer shadow again. And that kind of reinforces the effect. Or I can like give it a different direction. And I can change the color. So we do this. So I can have like multiple glow effects going on here. Not sure if that's the best color choice, but it's possible to do multiple things there. I'll remove that one. Whoops, clicked the wrong button. But that's kind of a little trick is instead of using glow, you can just use outer shadow and set the blend mode to screen, increase the opacity, change the color, and then you have these options to like all this other stuff you can do. And this is the glow tool here, which you don't have those abilities there. So that's one thing I like about the using shadow instead. So let's look at color gradient and gradient overlay, color overlay. Segmentaria is saying, is there a way to integrate Krita brushes into Affinity? I'm not exactly sure. I haven't tried it before. I have some videos on, you may have seen how to do Procreate and Photoshop brushes. I think it depends on how Krita brushes work. If they're just like some bitmap, like a PNG file or something, then I can look into it, and probably you can just do it the same way it works with Procreate files, where you just take out the PNG file and you just use that to build the brush in Affinity. I'm certain like I don't think there's like a drag and drop way of doing it, but if you're able to actually look into the Krita brush file, which I assume you must be able to because it's like an open source program, I believe. I think it should be possible, but I can check it out some more. I think that's an interesting question. Again, it just depends on what the brush format is and how you can get that data inside of it. So color overlay and gradient overlay, just kind of a quick one. This one, fairly straightforward. I think it's used most often with bitmaps. So if you have a bitmap here, and this is transparent, in case, let me add a background so you can tell. So you're saying it doesn't work like Procreate? Yeah, I don't know like what the format of Krita brushes are. I've never like looked at it. Again, I'm not sure if you can like extract the files from inside of it and use it. So I would have to check out like what the brush format is. So color overlay and gradient overlay, they're pretty similar. If you click the effects, I'll click color overlay. And really it basically just kind of, whoops. I'm trying to get this on screen, as always. This is basically like what it does. It takes your bitmap and it's a convenient way of just replacing all the pixels with a color. And you can do the blend modes, so this could be useful. So for example, maybe you had an apple and you just wanted to give it a certain color, so you could say where's like soft light, and you could change how it looks, and it's a very easy way of just restricting a color to just the area of a bitmap. So I could change this if I wanted to. I changed the blend mode to soft light, or I could do normal if you wanted to have like a silhouette of something. So if I had a graphic, I would have a silhouette. Where's that cat one? The cat one was used in the emboss one. Oh, it's this one. So let me take this cat. So let's say I just wanted a silhouette of this. So I'll go to color overlay. And I just have the silhouette of my bitmap image there. So before, after, before, after. Maybe want to make it purple or something. And the gradient one is basically the same, except that you can just do a gradient instead. So I'll go gradient overlay. And it's again very similar. It's just you have the gradient controls on how you want to do it now. So we can choose our gradient type, let's say radial. You can choose the parameters of the gradients here. And then you could go and change the colors of the gradient somewhere. Yeah, here. Click on the gradient, and then you could make it whatever psychedelic colors you wanted, or whatever color scheme you like, you could do for your shape there. Like that, and then you can change the blend mode, of course. That's kind of interesting, actually. Something very kind of funny. But yeah, you can do that. So I think, for this one, it's kind of just an easy way of limiting the effect to a certain area. And it can be used quite easily with bitmaps. So I'll do before, after. So before, after, before, after. So that one's kind of straightforward. Again, it's just kind of a particular use case you may have. Probably very useful for silhouettes and things like that. And finally, let's look at Gaussian Blur. I don't think I created a specific slide for this one. This one, as I said, is a useful one for shadows. So as I said earlier, if you create a shape, what you can do is you can actually, copy it. And if you want to manually create shadow, what I recommend is usually the best color for shadows is some type of gray, but not always, but usually. I'll make it gray there. And then you can go to your FX. And then you can go down here to Gaussian Blur, check it. And then there's really only one setting, which is just like the radius of it here. And I guess, like I said, the more you go, there is a little bit of a fall off to answer the question earlier. But we can put it under here. And I'll send it to the back. And we can simulate a shadow. And on a white background, it doesn't matter what you do, but on a colored background, you'd want to set the blend mode to some type of multiply probably. Is usually the best one. So right now you can see the star. It looks kind of gray and plain. If I change the blend mode to multiply, it's like that. So let me make two copies of this. Lock this. Normal. So the one on the right is with just the gray normally set, and the one on the left is with the gray set to multiply. And I think, in my opinion, the left one looks better. It looks more natural the way it blends in with the background there. And on the right, it's kind of I don't know, bland and grayish, or just desaturated. It doesn't look that great. But on the left side, we use the blend mode itself. So in case you didn't see that, what I did here with the star is I applied the blur effect. But then I also set the blend mode to multiply. Now the blur effect is very basic. In Affinity Photo, there's way more. You have the smart filters, live, and I won't go into a big thing on this because we're already kind of going over time. But like, there's more sophisticated blur options. I mean, there's tons of them over here. I should probably make a video on all these. I haven't yet. But basically, this Gaussian blur is the one we have in the effects. But then we have all these other ones. There are motion blur, lens blur, all sorts of stuff. Blur is very common for creating like depth effects and motion and that kind of thing. So that's an Affinity Photo. But in Affinity Designer and the other ones, if you're using effects, you just have this normal blur. So that's the blur effects. Like I said, I think mostly I use it for like shadows and things like that if I want to manually create them. So that's kind of an overview of all the effects. That's all of them. So we went over, let's see. Yeah, Gaussian Blur. So we covered all of them. Certainly let me know if you have any questions. I'll go into the weekly Q&A session now. But if you have any other questions, feel free to ask away. Certainly if you have any questions on the layer effects also, or suggestions for future live streams. I'm always looking for ideas for live streams and things like that. Let's go down here, look at your questions. Yeah, so last week, Hillary, I'm not sure if you're still here. You asked this question, you said you deleted some FX options. How do you undo it? I'm not sure exactly what you meant by that. You can't permanently delete options. So if, like I said earlier, if you click the effects here, some stuff you have the option of deleting. Like if you add the outline, add an outline here, I can delete it, but I still have the option of like going back and adding it again. So I'm not quite sure what the trouble was, but certainly you can elaborate in the comments here if I didn't answer your question. But that was my interpretation of your question. So just let me know if there's more details to it. And yeah, so this week I released a video on DPI. Let me know if you guys saw that and you had any thoughts about it. It's a topic that a lot of people get confused. I've made several videos on it over the past year or so. I kind of want to just make an updated one and kind of talk about Affinity more. And I got a couple comments about where's the discussion of PPI, which is pixels per inch. And I intentionally left it out of the video for the main reason being that it's actually not that important. PPI stands for, as I said, pixels per inch. And it refers to the density of pixels on your physical screen. So if you took a ruler and you measured an inch on your computer monitor screen, there'd be a certain number of pixels that it had in that area. And your phone would have a different one, your tablet would have a different one, your TV would have a different one. Now, back in like the 90s or even early 2000s, as all these new devices started to come into play, like CRTs were moving to LCDs, and we were starting to get phones, and then we started to get tablets, and then people started watching stuff on their TV, like YouTube on their TV or other web pages on their TV. There was this fear that like, oh, we'd have to worry about the pixel density, like that would be a thing. And it didn't really turn out that way, or at least PPI wasn't really the solution to that. Pixel density isn't something that's really considered a lot unless you're actually like making a sign on Times Square and you need to know like how big the words are actually going to be on the sign. For the most part, what happens is people will have a mobile version of an image and a desktop version, you know, and that's kind of the way I saw a lot of things go. For the mobile version of your website, you'll have images for the mobile device and they're optimized for that. And for the desktop version, you'll have different images. That's kind of one way of dealing with it. Another way is that a lot of websites will just like specify the dimensions of what you can use. Like you upload something to Instagram and they say they like 1080 by 1080 or something like that. And that's basically it, period, end of story, right? No one really says PPI or has those types of requirements. It's more just about the resolution. So that's what I would focus on. I'll do a follow-up video also. It'll be a short one talking about PPI because I think it's something a lot of people ask about. But in general, it's not really a thing you have to worry about too much. Carol, reading your question. So you find that if you change from grayscale to CMYK all values to 100, then the mask is solid. Hope that helps. I'm not sure exactly what you mean. So grayscale to CMYK. And what do you mean by like a solid mask? You mean there's no levels of gray in the mask? Is that what you're talking about? That's what I'm understanding of your question. If you can elaborate a little bit, it'd be helpful. Going down, next question. I published a video on reviewing Breezer's thumbnails, and I saw Breezer, you were doing some new thumbnails, looked pretty awesome, so great job on that. And I got this question from Arail saying, I was wondering if you could do this in a live stream reviewing things. And the answer is, yeah, I would love to do that. The main thing is just getting submissions from people. I guess perhaps I'll put up a form or something. I did this like a while ago when I first started streaming. I didn't get a lot of submissions to really do it. But maybe now, I'm hoping if I publish more of these YouTube thumbnail reviews or just any kind of reviews of designs, people will kind of be aware that it's out there and they can submit things. And I think if you watch this video, you know, it gives you a good idea of like my style of reviewing. So I'm not going to tear your stuff down or anything like that. And the main purpose is really to like use it as an example of a teaching point of like how to actually do something technical. Because a lot of times it's like I can make these videos about how to create a YouTube thumbnail, but like there's so many different styles of thumbnail. And I think the way to start that type of video is really helpful to like start with someone's domain or someone's niche. You know, okay, this person's doing a gaming channel. Here's some examples of their thumbnails. What can we do to make them even better, you know? Or this channel is about, you know, reviewing cars or whatever, you know, like how can we make this, you know, improved? So I think that whole concept of like making how-to videos, I find it helpful to start with with an actual example from someone and then kind of build from there, as opposed to just making stuff up. Yeah, Breezer, no problem. So I got this question, how did you apply the gradient to the stroke? So yeah, let's look at that. So I'm in Affinity Designer here. And if I add a shape, I'll add text just for change of thing. So you're sick of my star. Text. Let's make it blue. Let's give it a stroke. And if you, let's make this a thicker thing. So I gave it a stroke here. So if I select the gradient tool, up here you have this context option. So by default it's fill. I can change this to stroke. And then when I drag on my objects, the gradient is affecting the stroke. And I can do all the same controls here. So I'll click on the dot. I'll change the color. Let's make it look obviously like a gradient. So like that. So the answer is when you select this gradients tool down here, if you want to affect the stroke of what you have selected, make sure you change the context to stroke. Okay, so that's that one there. And I got this question from Bob the guy. He says he noticed now that there's an export option for JPEG XL, and it's an upgraded version of JPEGs. Am I seeing any movement from basic JPEGs to JPEG XL? Any news on this news format? Yeah, I've looked into it a little bit. Apparently it's still not widely supported in a lot of browsers, so I think that's what's holding it back. It sounds really cool. There's a Wikipedia article about it with some details, and they talk about that thing. They say like where it's supported and where it isn't. Let me see if I'll bring up this article here. We can just look through it briefly. No problem, Hector. Thanks for joining. I know it's going a little long today. Well, maybe a little bit long, but I like to go through your questions. So this is JPEG XL, and the extension is JXL. And I won't like painfully go through this, but it does have a section where it says like how is it supported, and I guess it was introduced in Chrome briefly in 2021, and then it was removed. So, and it's still kind of not fully there. I don't know like why it's not fully supported in the web browsers yet. So that's kind of the main thing. I mean, until it's supported there, it's probably not going to be used a lot. So yeah, for the moment it's cool, but I guess until the big boys start using it, it's not really going to be that useful for most of us. I got this other question. What are your thoughts on using Google Slides as graphic design software? Yeah, I think it's fine if it works for you. Affinity Designer, like they have a free 6-month trial, so I would try using that for the, to see if it will suit your needs. But Google Slides, I've used it a lot when I was, working at a company and stuff like that. I don't know if I'd say I was using it for graphic design. I was using it for like flow charts and graphs and other things like that. But if it's getting the job done for you, that's great. But there may be features you don't know you're missing that you will discover you're missing when you use something like Affinity Designer. So I would say give it a shot. There's a free trial, 6 months. I think it's worth trying. That's the last question. Carol, let me look at your question a little more closely now. I'm trying to understand what you're saying. So when you change from Grayscale to CMYK, gray, create. So you're saying when you change from Grayscale to CMYK, what's a good image to put in here? How should I test this? If you have a mask, so let's add a mask to it. I'll just try this briefly, and then I don't know, some type of mask. And then you change it to CMYK. Then the mask is solid. Yeah, I'm not seeing that. I don't know. Again, if you can tell me the steps to reproduce it. I'm not sure if you're still in the comments, but if you can add a comment to this video or something like that. That's my best guess of what you were describing. So I'm not sure exactly how to go about that. But if you can provide more details, I'll definitely look into it. Thanks 0815 for subscribing. And thanks IH. Thanks all you guys for joining. That's all I have for today. And like I said, if you have any comments or questions going forward, you can leave it on this video. Certainly suggestions for future live streams, things you'd like to see. And hope you all enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Thanks for joining. And